this channel by subscribing and leaving comments.
Back in 1955, a man named William Roe claimed to have sighted a Sasquatch, a female Sasquatch, for a considerable amount of time. He was checking out a mine on Mica Mountain in British Columbia, and he went public about his sighting. John Green had contacted him, longtime researcher John Green, and John Green included details in his first book from 1968 on the track of the Sasquatch. A few years back, I had released audio of an interview that William Roe had done on Jack Webster's show in Canada. I believe the year was 1957 when he did that interview, but it could have been 58, I'm not sure. It's a short interview, and what I'll do is I'll let the interview play, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. And just so you know, some of the images that you'll see accompanying the video are courtesy of the William Roe family, from William Roe's grandson Bill, as well as Roger Patterson's 1966 book, Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist, and from John Green's aforementioned book, and a few from Google Images. I hope you enjoy it, and again, I'll talk a little bit about it at the end and show you what John Green wrote about it. And you can draw your own conclusions, and I'll just leave it at that, basically. Enjoy.
The next two interviews were made by Jack Webster for Vancouver radio station. In the first, he's talking to William Roe, who was then a resident of Cloverdale and later of Edmonton, and then to Charles Flood of Vancouver, who is now dead. These interviews were made in 1957 or 58. Part of Mr. Webster's introduction of Mr. Roe is cut off at the beginning of the tape.
Who has seen a Sasquatch. It was in October 1955, less than 2 years ago, in a berry patch in the mountains north of here, not too far away, that Bill had this experience. Tell me about it in your own words.
Well, I saw a Sasquatch. There's no question about it at all. He was about 6 feet tall, had hair all over except in the spots on his face. The bottom of his feet and hands was bare. And
did it see you first, or did you see it
I
first?
saw it first and watched it for about 5 minutes in there.
Was it human-like in its motion?
It was.
Was there any possibility it could have been some strange kind of a bear?
Oh, no, not at all, whatever.
Now, just give me the description again. Did it conform to the kind of historic pattern?
Exactly. As near as I can tell, it wasn't quite so big, but it, being a female, it wouldn't be so big.
It was quite distinctly a female.
Oh, yes.
What would the total weight be?
Well, it'd be a 300-pounder or maybe more.
Did it make any noises which might indicate an ability to speak?
It made a kind of a cackling noise, like.
Wasn't a laugh?
Well, you couldn't hardly call it a laugh or a language.
Did you have a gun with you, Mr. Rowe?
Yes, I did.
Did you feel tempted to shoot it?
Well, I thought about it. A man can't do them things. They look too much like humans, which I know it was.
There's a good eyewitness for you, Bill. Mr. Bill Rowe of Cloverdale, who less than 2 years ago saw something standing erect, looking like a human, a female, a Sasquatch.
Well, Jack, you'd better not stay too long overseas, because right now we're making a date for Party Line next year to join the expedition searching for the great hairy tribe of monsters who, they say, roam this lovely Harrison Hot Springs section of our province. Who knows? Maybe you'll hear a Sasquatch talk first on Party Line. This is Bill Herbert returning you to our central studio in Toronto.
Because the interview is so short in length, there's not a lot we can glean from it. It's unfortunate, but fortunately, in John Green's 1968 book on the track of the Sasquatch, there are a lot of details given because William Roe had written and signed an affidavit pertaining to his alleged sighting. One thing that strikes me as interesting is the fact that Roe mentions that the creature's hands and feet were void of hair. They were bare of hair. And that's interesting because if you notice in the Patterson film, the soles of that subject's feet are seemingly bare with no hair. So that might be, something to consider. We don't know if William Roe actually saw a Sasquatch. He was a seasoned hunter. And I'd be really surprised if a seasoned hunter would confuse a Sasquatch or rather a bear for a Sasquatch. Many years back, I used to teach drums to all ages of children and even adults. And I would just throw it out there when I was teaching, a 5-6-year-old, have you ever heard of Sasquatch? And sometimes they'd say yes, sometimes they wouldn't. And then I thought, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll bring in pictures of bears, gorillas, and, the Patterson-Gimlin film frame and see what a kid says when I show them and when I ask them, what do you see? So I would start with a gorilla. And I would show a picture of the gorilla and the kid would say, that's a gorilla or a monkey. Show them a picture of a bear, black bear, brown bear, whatever. And they would say, that's a bear. And we're talking a 5-6-year-old kid. Show them a picture of a Sasquatch and they'd sort of pause and they would say, gorilla or monkey. So I'm pretty confident that the vast majority of people out there in the world, at least in North America, I would say, maybe not the world, in North America, would know the difference between a gorilla-like looking creature and a bear. But I want to show you what John Green wrote in his 1968 book. And it's this book. This is a later edition on the track of the Sasquatch. In this edition, it starts on really at the bottom of page 12. And continues on 13 and 14. And I'll read this, and you'll see it on the screen, so don't worry. You'll be able to follow along, and you can judge my reading. But I'm going to start at the top of page 13. Well, let me start at the bottom of page 12, because there's a bit of an intro. So John Green writes, in an addition to the information in this sworn statement, Mr. Roe, he's referring to the affidavit, Mr. Roe made the following remarks regarding the Sasquatch in a letter. And I will show you the affidavit. I think I already did earlier in the video, but I'll show it again. And this is what William Roe had written John Green. The nails were not like a bear's, but short and heavy like a man's fingernails are. Its eyes were not light and large, but small and black like a bear's. You couldn't see any knotted, corded muscles. This animal seemed almost round. It was as deep through as it was wide. And I believe if this animal should have been 7 feet tall, it would have weighed close to 500 pounds. That's a lot of details. A lot of details there. A lot of details. We have to get away from the idea of comparing it to a human being as we know them. So, yeah, I was mistaken when I said that it continues on the next page, on page 14. It doesn't, because it gets into the Albert Osman case. But I need to go back. Silly me, I need to go back to page 11. Because this is what William Roe actually sent to John Green. Yeah, sorry about that. But anyways, this is live. I'm doing it live, and I'm a first take guy. There's a little bit of an intro on page 10, so I'll show you that. And you can see, you're seeing it now on your screen. There's a drawing done by William Roe's daughter for John Green under William Roe's direction. Her name is, or was, I'm not sure if she's still living, Myrtle. And as well, his wife's name was Myrtle. But at the bottom of page 10, it starts with, so that the reader may judge for himself Both stories are presented here in full with the supporting statutory declarations. William Roe had moved to Edmonton by the time I asked him to put the story in sworn form. Here is what he sent to me. He's referring again to Albert Ostman and William Roe because he covers both stories in his book. And William Roe did live for a while near Mica Mountain, where he had a sighting. He lived at, if I'm saying it right, Tete Juan Cache. And that's French, and I studied French for a little while in school, but I didn't retain much of it. But I think that's maybe how you say it, or it's close. Okay, here's what William Roe said about his sighting. Ever since I was a small boy back in the forest of Michigan, I have studied the lives and habits of wild animals. Later, when I supported my family in northern Alberta by hunting and trapping, I spent many hours just observing the wild things. They fascinated me. But the most incredible experience I ever had with a wild creature occurred near a little town called Tete Juan Cache, British Columbia, about 80 miles west of Jasper, Alberta. If you know your Canadian geography, Alberta borders British Columbia. I had been working on the highway near Tete Juan Cache for about 2 years in October 1955. I decided to climb 5 miles up Mica Mountain to an old deserted mine, just for something to do. I came in sight of the mine about 3 o'clock in the afternoon after an easy climb. I had just come out of a patch of low brush into a clearing when I saw what I thought was a grizzly bear in the brush on the other side. I shot a grizzly near that spot the year before. This one was only about 75 yards away, but I didn't want to shoot it, for I had no way of getting it out. So I sat down on a small rock and watched, my rifle in my hands. I could just see part of the animal's head and the top of one shoulder. A moment later, it raised up and stepped out into the opening. Then I saw it was not a bear. This, to the best of my recollection, is what the creature looked like and how it acted as it came across the clearing directly toward me. My first impression was of a huge man, about 6 feet tall, almost 3 feet wide, and probably weighing somewhere near 300 pounds. It was covered from head to foot with dark brown, silver-tipped hair, but as it came closer, I saw by its breasts that it was female. And yet, its torso was not curved like a female's. Its broad frame was straight from shoulder to hip. Its arms were much thicker than a man's arms and longer, reaching almost to its knees. Its feet were broader proportionately than a man's, about 5 inches wide at the front and tapering to much thinner heels. When it walked, it placed the heel of its foot down first, and I could see the gray-brown skin or hide on the soles of its feet. There's some more parallels here to the Patterson-Gimlin film. And there are some skeptics who fully believe that Patterson really took the William Roe encounter and put it into a hoaxed scenario in 1967. It came to the edge of the bush I was hiding in, within 20 feet of me, and squatted down on its haunches. Reaching out its hands, it pulled the branches of bushes toward it and stripped the leaves with its teeth. Its lips curled flexibly around the leaves as it ate. It was close enough to see that its teeth were white and even. The shape of this creature's head somewhat resembled a Negro's. The head was higher at the back than at the front. The nose was broad and flat. The lips and chin protruded farther than its nose. I guess it means further. From the hair that covered it, leaving bare only the parts of its face around the mouth, nose, and ears, made it resemble an animal as much as a human. None of this hair, even on the back of its head, was longer than an inch, and that on its face much shorter. Its ears were shaped like a human's ears, but its eyes were small and black like a bear's, and its neck was also unhuman, thicker and shorter than any man's I'd ever seen. As I watched this creature, I wondered if some movie company was making a film at this place, and that what I saw was an actor, made up to look partly human and partly animal. But as I observed it more, I decided it would be impossible to fake such a specimen. Anyway, I learned later there was no such company near that area. Nor, in fact, did anyone live up Mica Mountain, according to the people who lived in Tete Juan Cache. Finally, the wild thing must have got my scent, for it looked directly at me through an opening in the brush. A look of amazement crossed its face. It looked so comical at the moment, I had to grin. Still in a crouched position, it backed up 3 or 4 steps, then straightened up to its full height, and started to walk rapidly back the way it had come. For a moment it watched me over its shoulder as it went, not exactly afraid, but as though it wanted no contact with anything strange. Again, a few parallels to the Patterson-Gimlin film. The thought came to me that if I shot it, I would possibly have a specimen of great interest to scientists the world over. I had heard stories about the Sasquatch, the giant hairy, sorry, knee set of teeth, gotta work them in. I had heard stories about the Sasquatch, the giant hairy Indians that live in the legends of British Columbia Indians. And also, many claim, are still in fact, gotta turn the page, alive today. Maybe this was a Sasquatch, I told myself. I leveled my rifle. The creature was still walking rapidly away, again turning its head to look in my direction. I lowered the rifle. Although I have called the creature it, I felt now that it was a human being, and I knew I would never forgive myself if I killed it. Just as it came to the other patch of brush, it threw its head back and made a peculiar noise that seemed to be a half laugh and half language, and which I can only describe as a kind of whinny. Then it walked from the small brush into a stand of lodgepole pine. I stepped out into the opening and looked across a small ridge just beyond the pine to see if I could see it again. It came out on the ridge a couple of 100 yards away from me, tipped its head back again, and again emitted the only sound I had heard it make. But what this half laugh, half language was meant to convey, I do not know. It disappeared then, and I never saw it again. I wanted to find out if it lived on vegetation entirely or ate meat as well, so I went down and looked for signs. I found it in 5 different places, and although I examined it thoroughly, could find no hair or shells of bugs or insects, so I believe it was strictly a vegetarian. I'm not sure how Mr. Roe could conclusively state that he saw signs of that creature by looking elsewhere, because there would be other animal activity, but it doesn't call into question his credibility. It's just, I'm not so sure how he would know for certain that the signs he saw were from that creature. And the next point kind of illustrates that further. I found one place where it had slept for a couple of nights under a tree. How would he know that? How would he know it was that creature that slept under that tree? Could it not have been a deer or a bear? He found no hair. Did an imprint show up under the tree that matched the creature's body design? I don't know. It's a little strange, but some people are very confident. I've seen that many times. It doesn't mean that they're lying. It's just maybe they're a little overconfident, let's say. So yeah, I found one place where it had slept for a couple of nights under a tree. Now, the nights were cool up the mountain, at this time of year especially, and yet it had not used a fire. I found no sign that it possessed even the simplest of tools, not a single companion while in this place. Whether this creature was a Sasquatch, I do not know. It will always remain a mystery to me, unless another one is found. I hereby declare the above statement to be in every part true, to the best of my powers of observation and recollection. Signed, William Roe, sworn before William Clark, a commissioner of oaths in and for the province of Alberta. And then the next part is what I read to begin with, mistakenly. And we can see his affidavit here now on the screen. I, W. Roe, meaning William Roe, of the city of Edmonton, and remember, this time he was living in Edmonton, in the province of Alberta, make oath and say, 1, that the Exhibit A attached, and that's what I just read, to this my affidavit is absolutely true and correct in all details. Signed, William Roe, and it was sworn before, again, William Clark, in the city of Edmonton, in the province of Alberta, this 26th day of August, AD 1957. So that's the William Roe account. I want to again thank the Roe family for sharing photos and information. And again, they also they sent some great photos that you can see here that had never really seen the light of day. And the interview that you listened to, it had never been made public to my knowledge, other than airing on the radio back in either 57 or 58. And even Green didn't know if it was 57 or 58, as he said off the top. But yeah, that's the William Roe story, and hopefully you enjoyed that. Take care, and look for some more interviews and reaction and commentary regarding those interviews. Take care. Bye.
If you're enjoying all this rare and unique content, please show your support by subscribing and leaving comments.